Gamers, what's good? So typically when I make a tier list, I do it 2 weeks right into a new format, way after the new cards came out. Most people already have made their tier list by then. Actually, I noticed a lot of people make their tier list for a format before the format has even started. And that's fine. A lot of people love to watch that, and I think that's cool. And in fact, I'm like, why not throw my hat in the ring? Why not, get a little double dip? Why not double dip in the tier list meta a little bit here? And so I decided I would make a prediction tier list. Now, I'm not going to be doing this for every format, but we are going to be getting TENPAI very soon in Master Duel based on some leaks from Master Duel meta, and that would be like in 2 days or something at the time of recording this video. So with TENPAI coming very close, I think the format is going to change so much that it's actually pretty interesting to do a prediction tier list right now. Obviously, I wouldn't do this if the new cards we were getting was, I don't know, like crash bug support, but TENPAI is going to make a pretty big splash, so I think it's worth a discussion. 2 weeks into the new format, after we already got the cards and everything, and I feel like I have a better idea of the format, then I'll do like my official tier list for the month. Instead, this is more so going to be talking about the decks I think are interesting. So I'm not going to be putting as many decks in this prediction tier list because there's a lot of decks that I think are just going to be staying where they are, not moving. And I don't think those are that interesting to talk about. I'll still talk about some of them, but I'm more so interested in talking about what's going to be changing in Master Duel, because it is going to be a pretty big switch up with TENPAI coming very soon. So I think it's just like a perfect opportunity to do like a prediction tier list. But before we get into that, I do need to shout out the sponsor for this video. And don't worry, this is not some weird mobile game that's trying to nickel and dime you. We're sponsored by an honest to God, really good indie PC deck builder roguelike type game. So the game is called Dimensionals, and it's made by indie game studio Mino Games. It's kind of a mix of a deck builder roguelike as well as like turn-based RPG games. You build energy every turn, and the energy pool is shared among 3 heroes of your choice. There's a ton of heroes that you can pick from, and as you go through your run, you find different cards or skills that can benefit like whichever build you're going for. And similar to Yu-Gi-Oh, the game is pretty simple on the surface, but there's certainly a ton of depth and room for skill expression within the game. A quick and easy example is Shork. This hero that you pick has a default ability which basically gains 10 block and then deals damage equal to his own block, and it costs 0 mana, so you can spend all your mana and resources into boosting his block, and then for 0 mana deal like massive damage. Even later into your run, you might find a card that does the same thing but even better, and at that point you're doing like absolutely crazy damage while also taking all the hits and tanking them all through your blocking. So yeah, I really like this play style of just boosting my defense. So like, if you try the game, try out this strategy, I guess. A mini deck profile for this game or something, I don't know. And the animation is really good too. It's even got these like high quality animated cutscenes. If you like card games or roguelikes, I really think it's a no-brainer. You should at least try the demo and definitely wishlist the game on Steam. The game and demo are both going to be available on Steam, and of course I left the link in the description, so make sure to wishlist the game before its full release. Again, a huge thank you to Mino Games and Dimensionals for sponsoring this video. Please check it out. It's genuinely really fun. And back to the tier list. All right, so we're back. Shout out again, Dimensionals. That genuinely a fun game. I might have accidentally shilled harder than they asked me to. I wasn't even lying. It's a roguelike card game. I wasn't lying. Call me a shill in the comments if you want. I wasn't lying. It's a fun game, dude. I'm just saying. Anyway, let's get into this tier list here. And as I like to do with this, I don't like beating around the bush, even though we just did. TENPAI. I think TENPAI on release is the best deck in the game. I think it's the best deck in the game. Now, unfortunately, and I'm going to tell you right now, it is 2 a.m., 2 days before the cards come out in Master Duel. And normally we would have already had the rarities confirmed for the upcoming pack in Master Duel. So I'm a bit surprised that we don't. So yeah, we don't know if we're going to get an emergency ban list for this deck. It's possible that we would get an emergency ban list that puts the field spell at 1. A lot of people are predicting that. Personally, I'm genuinely hoping that it comes out unhit. I know a lot of people thought I was trolling in my last video, and I was having a little bit of fun with that video. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I was kind of trolling a little bit, but I wasn't joking. I wasn't like being sarcastic to that extent. Like I do genuinely think this deck should just come out unhit, and I hope it stays unhit for like 2 years. I am so happy as a streamer, as a guy who's streaming Master Duel, to have a deck where I can just jump into a ladder and just, you know, pick going second, play some Tetris, read the chat. Okay, here, what I really like about Tenpai is really it's evening the playing field, right? Because it's like, you know, when we're playing Tenpai, we're all Jesse Cotton, you know? We're all Joshua Schmidt. This is a true communist deck. It levels the playing field for everyone. And I'm very, very happy that I'll be carried by a deck on stream. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I know. I don't know. I mean, I know I sound like I'm being sarcastic. I am not. I mean, I can't wait for this deck to come out. I can't wait. I'm going to be the toxic one with this one. I'm going to be the guy. I'm going to be the asshole. And that's okay. But I do think that this deck, just the fact that it can run so many board breakers, that it can run so many hand traps, that it needs so little to get going, that it can play under shifter, that it has this insane swarm ability, the fact that it can put up, I think it's like 24 or 26,000 damage in one turn pretty freaking easily. Not to mention that your field spell is Misk, like your field spell makes all your monsters unaffected on the field. And then during the battle phase, like you get to just quick synchro, not once per turn, multiple times. Yeah. I think this deck is crazy. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And I do genuinely think in a best of one format, a deck that's this good at going second is going to be the best deck in the format unless they hit it tremendously with some kind of emergency ban list. And even then, if they did something like field spell to 1, I think this deck is still tier 1. I think it's just that it might not be alone, because genuinely, I don't think I'm putting any other deck in tier 1 for this format. And again, this is just a prediction list, so I might be wrong, right? Like, because again, this is like a prediction tier list of what I think is going to happen with the format with these cards coming out. I don't think I'm really going to be wanting to put any deck other than Tenpai at tier 1. My main reason for that is just because I feel like going second is just going to be the best. And there's going to be a bunch of different going first decks that have a pretty good matchup into Tenpai that all, if they get their full setup going first, will kind of win that matchup. Unless Tenpai draws the nuts, like in some matchups it's going to be unless you draw Droplet, or if you draw Red Reboot, you're going to win with Tenpai. You know, since you're going to be going second with Tenpai, I just feel like a lot of the decks that want to go first are just kind of, it feels like they might end up being not necessarily on even footing, but not like good enough to warrant being in tier 1. I think the format is going to be warped around Tenpai for a bit. Unless like this deck is hit to hell, and I really don't think that's going to happen. I'm hoping it isn't hit at all actually when it comes out. But anyway, so that's my logic. That's why I'm not putting anything next to Tenpai. At first I was going to put Yubel here. Then I realized Yubel, they got hit tremendously on the last tier list. I mean, might not seem like that much, but they don't have Fiendsmith yet. They don't have Varudris yet, like that Omni Negate rank 10. So really, Yubel has 2 Phantom. They lost their Ibli. They don't have all the support to help them really like, you know, be more of a threat to a deck like Tenpai. Tenpai runs a bunch of board breakers. And in fact, while we're having this conversation, I'm just going to show you what I think is the top of tier 2. So we have Snake Eyes Fire King and Yubel. I think Snake Eyes Fire King plays better technically into Tenpai. Now, to be fair, if Tenpai draws D-Shifter, this deck totally dies. I thought Yubel I was going to put above here, because Yubel has some good things going for it when it comes to Tenpai. It's just the fact that without the Fiendsmith engine and with, you know, the hits that Yubel took, the fact that we don't have the win for free button with Ibli anymore, I feel like Yubel is going to be in a weird spot. Yubel does not like board breakers, you know, just one Lightning Storm. Just clearing the Yubel back row, honestly, is going to do probably enough for Tenpai to win, in my opinion. Genuinely, I don't think the on-field presence of Yubel is going to be really enough. I mean, usually they don't really set up spell and trap negates. Maybe they'll find a way to do that. Until they have Varudris, at least, they don't really have a way to do that. If we do get Varudris in the new set, I would put Yubel above Snake Eyes Fire King. But if we don't, which I don't think we will, because it hasn't been leaked as far as I can tell, it's going to be under here. I'm going to put this one above. I mean, Fire King, Snake Eyes, you know, has a bunch of removal cards and stuff like that they can set up to easily, like, pop the field spell. For example, Ponix can search a removal spell. I forget the name of it, but it's a flash spell that pops, right? Ponix can search that mid-combo. I'm not even going to put other versions of Snake Eyes on the list. Keep in mind, Poplar went to 1. This deck has taken so many consistency hits. Kirin did go to 2, but I still think now with how many consistency hits the Snake Eyes engine took, I think you're going to be seeing people really just sticking to the Fire King variant, just so, you know, you have like that extra consistency from the Fire King engine, especially with Poplar to 1. Someone, a Pokemon trainer in my Discord, pointed out to me that in the graveyard now, when you go original sinful spoils, since you can't search Poplar, you're either going to want to search a leftover Oak if you didn't use it in your turn 1 combo, or you're most likely going to be searching a Ponix on turn 3 now with the graveyard effect of original sinful spoils. And yeah, because of that, I do think the Snake Eyes Fire King variant is going to be pretty much probably what you want to play for Snake Eyes. So this deck having graveyard setup helps it tremendously. Being able to pop the field spell very easily, either with the effect of Kirin or with the flash spell, like I said, is going to make it a lot easier to deal with Tenpai, because that field spell is a real threat. You really need to be able to deal with the Tenpai field spell since it is a misc effect and it's also a Rhoda. It also can, obviously both of these decks can play through a ton of hand traps, which Tenpai is most likely going to be running a good amount of hand traps and a good amount of board breakers. I feel like this deck plays better into board breakers. Yubel isn't necessarily bad into board breakers. Obviously, if you pop their monsters, they can still do things. So I don't think this deck becomes bad. You know, this is just a prediction tier list, but I do feel like Snake Eyes Fire King is probably going to look a little bit better than Yubel. And honestly, Yubel might even be a little bit too high here, but you know, we'll leave that as is for now. And next up, I guess we can do one of the new decks that's coming to the game here. Goblin Bikers. It's like a pretty mid, like rank 3 deck. I mean, I'm going to put it in Rogue, but even that's kind of being generous. Like, I'm not even convinced this is Rogue. I don't even know what Rogue is going to feel like in this format with Tenpai being so dominant. I guess Rogue, what it's really going to mean for this format is when you get established turn 1, do you beat Tenpai? And if someone makes you go second, you know, because you might be used to going first if there's really a lot of people playing Tenpai. If someone makes you go second, can you do enough to like get into these going first decks that set up like a really insane board? And you know, from what I've seen from Goblin Bikers, going second seems kind of rough. Depending on the hand, and going first, like, yeah, the combo is really good, the removal is really solid, all that stuff, but it seems pretty normal summon reliant. Now, I don't have the most experience with this deck, but I did do more research on the deck afterwards just to get a better idea, a better sense of what the deck does. And from what I can tell, pretty interruptible, pretty fragile, and honestly probably would need just some better like 1-card starters. Like, you know, if you're running 3 copies of a Tour Guide from the Underworld in your deck in 2024, you know, it's the end of 2024. You're running Tour Guide. Like, that says a lot if you have to run Tour Guide in main deck. I'm just saying. So yeah, I'm not really feeling this deck. I don't think if I put it Rogue, it's just to be nice. I'm honestly not convinced it stays Rogue, because I'm really not convinced this deck is better than Memento, and I don't even put Memento in Rogue normally. But yeah, so Goblin Bikers, maybe I'm underestimating them. I'm giving them a chance. I'm going to put them in Rogue on my prediction list, and I'll revisit that thought 2 weeks later when we do the actual tier list. But let's move on here. Let's move on. We've yapped enough about the Goblin Bikers. This is not even really on the tier list, I don't think, like Stun. And the thing about Stun, okay, so obviously Stun got tremendously hit, right? Like with Jowgen getting banned and Fossil Dyna going to 1, Stun is going to be having to run a lot more barrier statues. That's why I replaced the image of Fossil Dyna with an image of a barrier statue this time around, right? And yeah, I mean, barrier statues, they can be good sometimes, but they're very situational. It's very hard to pick the proper barrier statues. No one's going to want to run the fire one when you have friggin' Tenpai running around, right? So you're going to have to draw one of the better statues. And the thing is, these stun decks, they all lose to board breakers pretty hard, which are going to be super popular with Tenpai running around. Not to mention, not only does it lose really hard to board breakers, but a lot of decks like it lose to board breakers, and they all want to run Shifter, and Shifter doesn't affect this. So like, I'm putting Stun here, but even though I didn't include them on the list, you can include Kashtira with Stun. You can include Floowandereeze. Like, all those decks that are trying to basically dimensional fissure the opponent on turn 1, as well as set up like other potential stun effects, are usually pretty damn weak to board breakers, and activating D-Shifter is just not going to be doing anything for you against this deck. This deck literally runs D-Shifter. Actually, the fact that it runs D-Shifter makes me kind of want to put these lower, but it's going to be such a weird format. So, you know, we're doing a prediction list here. We'll see what happens. I can't wait to read people's takes in the comments, though. Another thing I just want to mention here, this is not even a deck, really. So I'm just going to put it in the I don't know tier. Banshee over here, this is a generic rank 4. Banshee can search a Nemesis flag, which can then search a Protoss. By shuffling back a banished card into your deck, you summon the flag searches Protoss. And then Protoss can pop fire monsters on the field, which would be obviously the Banshee over here is fire, right? So Protoss can declare fire, and this is going to beat Tenpai. Technically, any deck that you have that even if it's not on this tier list, if you have a deck that can easily make like a generic rank 4 like in the middle or the end of its combo, I'm thinking of a lot of decks. Like I think like Dinos can do it, probably Super Heavy Samurai could do it, you know, like just those are some random examples, but I'm just, you know, I'm just saying like random decks that can just like throw down a rank 4 for free basically pretty easily. You're probably going to want to run this. The reason for that is like, yeah, just guessing fire might not be the best if you're picking first, right? But keep in mind, a lot of the time, if you lose a coin flip and your opponent makes you go first, it's going to be extremely likely, like 90% minimum likely, that they're playing Tenpai. So that's like pretty good knowledge to have, right? If you have this option in your deck of just making a rank 4 searching Protoss declaring fire, that's going to be pretty crazy if you already know your opponent's on Tenpai just from them basically making you go first. Even if you just shotgun it, like if you're going first and you just shotgun it, you might accidentally hit a Snake Eyes deck, right? So just shotgunning fire on Protoss is not even that bad. Obviously, if you go first and you chose to go first, you know, your opponent didn't make you go first, you won the coin flip and you shotgun this, and then they're playing Yubel, you kind of have to make sure that the rest of your board is, you know, good enough that you can shotgun fire with this little Banshee engine here and still be able to have enough interruption to stop like a Yubel player, for example. I don't think that should be too hard, but, you know, you do have to be careful about that. Still, I think this engine is going to be probably a must play for any deck that can make an easy rank 4. So I did want to mention it, even though it's not really a deck. I just think being able to run this engine is going to make your deck a bit better on the tier list. Like, for example, Super Heavy Samurai might go up a little bit just because they can make this for basically free super easily mid combo. So I might put them in Rogue this time around instead of just not on the list. But anyway, let's move on finally. We've talked about that a lot now. Let's talk about another tier 2 deck. Yeah, I don't really like Ritual Beast, but Ritual Beast is most likely going to be quite good. In fact, you know, I think it might even be, you know, it might even be a bit higher than this. My thing about Ritual Beast, it's not going to be super good at going second. I also want to mention, I'm not super knowledgeable on Ritual Beast because I don't like the deck. So most of the information I'm giving you here is by talking to people in my Discord that have played the deck or do know the deck really well. Specifically, Pit to Sovs in my Discord is always a huge help. He plays a lot of tournaments and stuff. So I'm mostly relying on his info for Ritual Beast because, again, I'm not really labbing this deck. I don't like this deck at all. So, but basically, the deck going first plays through a lot of interruptions really, really well. It plays into Shifter better than these two decks, which is a reason that I'm like, is it actually? You know what I mean? Is it actually? You know what I'm saying? That's why I was kind of thinking about it. I was like, yo, low key, being able to play into Shifter is going to be a pretty big deal. So I think Ritual Beast is going to be really, really good for that. The board it sets up has insane interruption. It can easily set up the Protoss with the Banshee line that I just mentioned, which is why I mentioned it before talking about this deck here. It can easily set that up and have enough interruption to stop a deck that's not Tenpai. So for example, you can set up the Protoss, shotgun fire, and then you find out you're playing against Yubel. And it's like, oh, well, it's fine. You know, I have a couple of Omni Negates. You know, I have IP into SP and different things like that. I definitely have more than enough bases covered to deal with this. Not to mention the Fire Lock does stop your opponent from summoning Shavarva. So that does hurt Yubel. Like, it hurts it in a way because it stops them from getting into some of their Unchained plays. It doesn't stop the Unchained engine completely, but it does do a little bit. It's not bad. It's not terrible. Maybe, low key. Am I crazy enough to do that? Yo, it's my prediction tier list. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna say I think Ritual Beast is gonna be better than Yubel. Oh my god, that sounds so weird. The thing is, Yubel's way better than this at going second. My big thing right now is, yeah, normally in a best of one format, I really value being good at going second, but this is the format where people are gonna be making you go first the most often. So a deck that really feels like consistent and plays well into Shifter and plays well through interruption and can just like, maybe it doesn't go that good going second, but it goes really well going first. this is the format for a deck like that. You know what I mean? When you have Tenpai roaming around, making you go first, and Tenpai is going to be really easy to play. I'm sure a ton of people are going to be picking it up. And so I think it's going to be a super popular deck. So I think a deck like Ritual Beast might be really well situated. Now, I might be overrating it just based on the way Pit to Solves was rating the deck to me and the way he was talking about it. So, you know, maybe I'm tripping. I could see it. I don't know. I feel like Yubel got hurt a lot on that last ban list, like a lot more than people are giving it credit for. Let's do something. Let's do something a little different here. Centurion. So Centurion, on my last tier list, I put at the top of tier 3 because I thought it was a really, really good deck, and I thought a lot of people were underestimating Centurion. Now, unfortunately, I think with Tenpai, Centurion goes back down to Rogue. I think it's a bit too mid-rangey, you know, to really be dealing with something with this many board breakers that's this explosive, with that many hand traps, that can win the game that easily, that can literally, like, there's just so much going on with this deck. It's super, super easy to, like, force out the Blazer with just your field spell, even if you didn't draw your board breakers. You know, so I just feel like there's a lot of things that are going to make it rough for Centurion in the upcoming format. I just don't think it's the most well-situated deck to play into Tenpai, unfortunately. So I'm actually switching spots between two decks here. We're going to have top of Rogue Voiceless now moving on up here to top of tier 3. I think Voiceless gets a lot better in Tenpai format because I think Voiceless is really well equipped specifically for the Tenpai matchup. For example, if you set up your trap card can easily deal with the field spell. You can pop the field spell when it tries to search, and so that's going to stop your opponent from searching. And then you also have your spell negate monster, which summons a meteor burst from your extra deck, and then Meteor Burst is going to turn off monster effects during the battle phase. So that means that you can essentially turn off Tenpai during the battle phase using that. Then you obviously have your Omni Negate on Skull Guardian, which depending on the situation, you know, if you can hold it, you could potentially negate Chundra's damage step effect in the battle phase, which means they're going to lose their Chundra and they're going to lose their Chundra effect, which is going to make it a lot harder for them to, you know, get into their synchro plays and stuff like that, and really get some good advantage. So I think Voiceless is pretty damn well situated, honestly. Now, that last one with Guardian is really just if you can afford to. Oftentimes, you'll have to use your negate a bit earlier with your Guardian. But still, I think Voiceless just has just everything it needs really for that matchup. Obviously, Droplet is a card, and Droplet will probably win this matchup most of the time unless the hand is really bad. Droplet will most likely be winning because, yeah, trap popping the field spell is good. But, you know, if they have like Pydra in hand and they had Droplet, they basically are going to win against Voiceless. So I guess that's something to keep in mind. Blessing can save you sometimes. You know, Blessing could let you ritual summon on opponent's turn and potentially like reestablish a Skull Guardian depending on the situation, or even a Ceravis. So, you know, don't sleep on that. But overall, I still think this deck is going to be much better situated in this upcoming format as a nice going first option. Here, I'm just going to talk about, you know, a deck that I really love. So Naturia. I think Naturia is going to be Rogue. I think it's going to be good, like pretty good. Naturia Beast is pretty good against Tenpai. Similar to Voiceless, though, we will lose to Droplet most of the time. Not completely, but pretty much completely. I think Naturia might start running the bug that stops battle phase. I forget what it's, the stink bug. I think we might start running the stink bug for that battle phase effect, although I'm not 100% sure because they can just like negate artifacts in the battle phase using that synchro. But I mean, if they want to declare an attack with Chundra, we can like end the battle phase there. So, you know, potentially the stink bug could make a pretty big difference. So like I'm just more so thinking like Naturia Beast plus Sunflower seems to be really, really good interruption for that deck. Then, you know, the ability to potentially get a stink bug on the field to force them to deal with it or to basically lose their battle phase. It all seems like tools that are really good to have. Not to mention now with Naturia Ragnarika, the consistency of Naturia went way up. And honestly, that Ragnarika trap, even though oftentimes it's just a pop 1, that's just enough pops to pop the field spell search. And so even if you don't have your Naturia Beast established yet, or if they droplet your Naturia Beast, you can still stop the field spell with that Ragnarika trap. So I'm inclined to say that Naturia is going to be pretty good. Loki, I think it might be top of Rogue. for at least my prediction list, by the way. Like, I'm not including that many decks on this list, so I'm not saying objectively the top of rogue, but I'm just saying low-key might be better than Centurion next format, but I'm going to leave it under. Centurion is still a really good deck if you ignore TENPAI. You know, Centurion is still pretty crazy. So moving on here, we're going to do tier limit. I think tier limit gets a lot worse. It gets a lot worse. Now, to be fair, not really the worst TENPAI matchup. So I might just be hoping or coping here more than anything. But I do think Pearl ban is like massive. A lot of people, I feel, underestimate that hit because they think it's just one card leaving tier limit. But really what they're losing is essentially 6 traps that they wanted to mill, right? Because like 6 of the best tier limit mills were the Trivikarma and the Crystal Beast trap, because they would search your Pearl and give you full tier combo. So now, like, your mills are not going to feel nearly as good. It's already lost so many good mills in tier, and now you're losing even more. You can still get Rhino Heart pretty easily and go like normal Rhino Heart and set up Crime on turn 1, and I think Crime is going to be pretty damn good into this. Not to mention, you know, tier is just a really solid deck in general. Like, it has a lot of good options. Snow is still crazy, so it's not like tier suddenly is bad. I think the ceiling of tier is basically the same. It's just that their mills are I think they're going to feel a lot worse. Losing 6, well, I guess it's 3 to 6 because not everyone was playing a 60 pile, but losing like 3 to 6 of your best mills for tier limit, I think that's pretty huge. I might be overestimating how big of a hit Pearl is, but I personally genuinely think that it's a pretty damn big hit. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm coping, maybe I'm hoping, because I'm really sick of seeing this deck, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's actually gonna be pretty good. Who knows? Either way, let's move on here. The next one we're gonna do, this is going to be an interesting one. So, Dragon Link. I think Dragon Link is back. I think it's coming back, baby. I mean, Borland forces the TENPAI player to summon the samurai. What is it called? It's like that machine samurai. Let me just go read it. Yeah, so it forces your opponent basically to summon Samurai Destroyer if they want to out the Borland because it can't be destroyed by battle. Then you also have the fact that you know, you can set up a Hieratic Seals. Seals can bounce the field spell when they try to activate it to search. So you can stop them from searching. So that's pretty good. Then you have your Borland Negate, which can't be responded to, which is also really solid, really strong. You have, you know, potentially a Savage on top of that. You got back a lot of cards for Dragon Link. Chaos Pace is going to 3. I think that's a big deal. That means you have basically, even though they only put Wyvern Burster to 1, realistically, with how many darks you're running in this deck, you actually have like 4 copies of Wyvern Burster just because of the Chaos Space. So I think that's a pretty big deal. I think we might actually see Dragon Link, at least in Rogue tier, be good again. I think this might be a really, actually pretty solid pick. Okay. This is actually my opinion. This is actually my opinion, now that I think about it. These have pretty good matchups into TENPAI. Not the best ever. Droplet is Droplet. Droplet is going to beat most of the decks here. When TENPAI draws Droplet, you're going to be sad about it. It is what it is. And TENPAI is going to draw Droplet pretty often because we have Max C in this game. So, you know, that's what it is. But other than that, these 2 decks, I think, have a better matchup into TENPAI than this one. So, yeah, I think Dragon Link might actually be good. Again, I might be coping here, but I think it might actually happen. Let's move on, though. Let's move on. We're gonna do Branded. Branded is definitely like probably like a tier 2 deck. I think Branded is gonna be pretty damn good. I mean, like, Branded has a, you know, yeah, in this game you don't get to like Gimmick Puppet lock. You don't get to Jowgen lock anymore because Jowgen is banned. But in the TENPAI matchup, you can literally just set up Rimbrum in the grave. With the Albaz in the grave, and you can just summon Albaz from the grave like during the battle phase, and summon Alba Lenitus using all your opponent's monsters, because, you know, you just use all the dragons plus Albaz on the field, just fuse into Alba Lenitus. That should win you the game, I'm pretty sure. So I think that play alone kind of insulates Branded from TENPAI at least a good amount, especially since it's in the grave, and, you know, TENPAI is going to be more so focused on board breaking and stuff like that. Might be actually pretty hard. Like, if you don't draw Called By, it's not going to be that easy to stop that, you know, Albaz play in the grave. So yeah, I think Branded is actually pretty well situated. I think it's going to stay good. All right, now moving on, we have Labyrinth, which I think is also Gonna be tier 2. Labyrinth is a very real deck, dude. Labyrinth has a lot of outs to Tenpai. Labyrinth loves when their opponent makes them go first. As for like the tools that they have, if you go for Dimensional Barrier, that's going to force the Tenpai player to go into the significantly more susceptible line, which is to go for like Promethean Princess, since you're going to be locked out of Synchro Summoning. And if you don't do that, well, you can just use Daruma Cannon, and Daruma Cannon actually plays around the unaffected clause of the Tenpai field spell because it makes the player flip all the cards face down, right? So Daruma Cannon is also a really, really strong out to Tenpai. You should not sleep on Daruma Cannon. Because of that, I think Labyrinth is going to be really well situated, and it might even be higher than this. Honestly, I was going to put it a bit higher. You know, we'll have to wait and see. I might be wrong about this. Also, like, with Shifter running around, you know, you might see Labyrinth want to play a more trap-focused variant instead of a furniture variant. I'm not sure about that. I'm not a Labyrinth player. So, yeah, I'm going to put Labyrinth, you know, at the bottom of tier 2 of my prediction list, but I think it might even be better than this, honestly. Like, I think Labyrinth is going to be pretty crazy well situated. You know, also, like, just the popping, being able to remove the field spell off the field. You know, the generic removal of Labyrinth is really, really good as well. Next up here, second to last, is just, this is not, I'm not even putting this on the list because I'm really unsure, but I more so just want to talk about it. But I saw a really cool Buster Blader mixed with Tenpai list. And yeah, Buster Blader will shut down all your opponent's dragons. So I think there might be a world where like Buster Blader becomes at least like playable, you know, just because of the popularity of Tenpai, and then like Tenpai making the Buster Blader player go first. And then the thing is, you also have Tenpai in the deck. So like if your opponent makes you go second, you could also just play Tenpai, which is obviously going to go crazy going second at the cost of having less board breakers and less hand traps and stuff like that, right? So it's pretty interesting, but just the fact that you shut down dragons completely with this deck, I think is pretty funny. So I think there is a possibility maybe that this deck, that Buster Blader Buster Blader Tenpai hybrid makes it to like playable tier. I might have to try that out, or at least hopefully someone's going to send it in deck showcase. I would really love to see it in action because I think it had some potential. I was looking at that list, I was like, yo, low key, like this is not that, it's not a very inconsistent deck, you know. They get set up pretty consistently. They can do their thing, you know. So I don't know. Maybe, dude. Maybe. I'm probably coping about this one. I just wanted to mention it. I don't think I've mentioned Buster Blader once on this fucking channel in the almost 3 years that we've been doing Master Duel content. So I figured, you know, I'll just mention Buster Blader. I love Buster Blader. Okay. And the last deck here, I'm a little conflicted. You know, like part of me, it's Math Mech, by the way. It's Math Mech. I kind of want to put him here, but my beautiful face is hiding him. So do we put Math Mech at the top of tier 3? Instead of Voiceless? Maybe. Okay, so the thing about Math Mech is it has a pretty damn good setup going first against Tenpai, because the Firewall Tempest, you know, the Link 5 basically that they summon, negates all monster effects during the battle phase. So, like, your opponent just can't activate Tenpai effects while that monster's on the field during the battle phase, which is like a massive deal. That means they can't quick synchro during the battle phase. It's a pretty huge deal. So they have to contend with that. You also have, obviously, your spell and trap negate in the graveyard. And you also have Super Factorial, which can remove the field spell and is also just like a crazy card in general that also sets you up a Omni negate on top of it. Like, I think there's a lot going on here. Obviously, if your opponent draws Droplet, you know, your Link 5 becomes not that crazy at all. And, you know, you run a lot of board breakers in Tenpai. You run a lot of hand traps in Tenpai. I don't know how crazy Math Mech is. There's also the fact that Math Mech is really good going second. So against a few decks that pick first, Math Mech has a better chance than a lot of other decks because it has a really good going second turn. So I think Math Mech is really good. Maybe the top of tier 3. Maybe it's almost tier 2. But I do think it goes way up on the tier list in this upcoming format just because, like, just the fact that Link 5 is literally just a floodgate that shuts off Tenpai in the battle phase is a huge, huge deal. Plus, that monster gets massive attack. It's like even for Tenpai, it might actually be hard to beat over. So yeah, I want to put Math Mech like either here or like low tier 2. I think it's going to be a really solid option in the upcoming format. And that's about it for this list. So like I said, not an all-inclusive list. I'm not trying to cover every single deck that I usually put on a tier list. I'm more so just trying to talk about interesting changes that I thought about when thinking about this upcoming format. I'm pretty damn excited to just play a bunch of Tenpai and I'll know like in 5 seconds if I have a chance or if I should just coop it up, you know. It's gonna make for some quick games, for some quick rank ups, hopefully. And yeah, that's my prediction. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments. You know, you can be mean when I like make my decisive tier list in the middle of the format where I'm like, no, I really think this is here. This is literally just me going like, I think this might end up here. Like, that's the point of this video, right? Just keep that in mind. You know, it's more so just to get the discussion going, you know, because that's what we like with this channel. My favorite thing about Yu-Gi-Oh is really talking about Yu-Gi-Oh more so than playing it most of the time, which is why I'm so excited to have this deck. So yeah, I just want to know you guys' thoughts. Let me know if you hate this list, if you think this is crazy, or this is crazy, or this is, you know, or this, you know what I mean? Just let me know. Just let me know. By the way, shout out to the voiceless players. I finally put your deck above Rogue. You just needed a different format, because last format, oh boy. Anyway, thank you for watching. All right. Peace.